All right. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everybody that's joining us today. I want to welcome everyone to our Ask the Expert session, Manage Risk and Compliance with End-to-End Security. This is a follow-on to the session held earlier, BRK241. If you haven't had a chance to view that yet, please go add it to your backpack as it provides a great summary of our announcements here at Ignite, as well as some of the topics that we're ready to discuss here today. My name is Jim Bannock. I'm a compliance architect in the Microsoft 365 Center of Excellence, and I will be moderating today's session for our panel. I'm joined here by several of my colleagues today who are undoubtedly subject matter experts in their given areas and are here to answer questions that you may have around the topics of Microsoft compliance solutions, including insider risk management, communication compliance, information protection, data loss prevention, and compliance manager. As we dive into today's session, we're going to start with a few housekeeping items just to make sure we have a great open discussion. We'll give our on-camera team a moment to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into an open question and answer period where our panel will work to address any of the questions that you may have on the topics we have listed today. If you have not attended an Ask the Expert session Ignite or one of our other conferences before, we will be using the Q&A panel to facilitate the discussion. So please use that box to ask any questions you have for our panel during the session. We will try to answer as many as we can live during our time today. Just a reminder, we are recording this session, and the recording will be posted on the Ignite website following the conference. To make sure we can answer as many questions as possible, let's please try and keep the Q&A panel to questions that are relevant to the session. It will help our team get questions to our panel as efficiently as possible. You can place your questions in there at any time. By being in this session, you also agree to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. It's listed here. I'm not going to take a chance on reading it all here, but there's also a link in the chat. We want to make sure that this is a welcoming event for everyone, and any disrespectful behavior, including harassment or discrimination, will not be tolerated. With that out of the way, let's take a moment to hand over the mic to allow our presenters to introduce themselves and their topics of expertise. Caitlin, if you want to go first.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Caitlin Fitzgerald here. I'm a product marketing manager for Insider Risk Management.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Eric, if you want to go next, sir.
Thank you, Jim. My name is Eric Willett, and I'm a PMM responsible for data loss prevention. Nice to meet all of you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eric. Shilpa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shilpa Botra. I'm a PMM for Compliance Manager. Great to have you all today in the session.
Thank you, Shilpa. Erin, if you want to introduce yourself next.
Hey, everyone. My name is Erin Miyake, and I'm a program manager working on insider risk management.
Okay. And Jenny.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. My name is Jenny. I'm a program manager with the communication compliance team. And thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoy the session.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Christoph.
Hello, everyone. Happy Ignite 2021. My name is Christoph Feisinger, and I'm on the communication compliance engineering team.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. So please remember, put your questions in the chat. But we're going to get started here. Eric, we heard a lot during the sessions that we're living in this hybrid world and organizations have that mix of environments in their organization. How do we see that the extension of endpoint DLP to Mac OS helps us improve the risk posture of organizations?
Sure, great question, Jim, and thanks for asking. The reality is that our users on Mac access and use data just as much as our Windows users, right? And in fact, a lot of these Mac users tend to be in very critical roles within organizations. And so one of the big things that we wanted to do was to broaden out the ecosystem to specifically include all of those users as part of our DLP policies, because again, they will want to copy files to USB drives or upload files or maybe copy content, from one document to another. And what we wanted to do was to actually support all of our users across all these different ecosystems so that we can have a consistent view and minimize the risks across the board. So it's not just, where they are using the content, as in the location, but also on what platform. So we support all of those things now.
Great, thank you, Eric. We also have a question in the chat right now. Posted there, we're rolling out, compliant devices, cloud apps for iOS and Windows. Are there any considerations that we should consider excluding to making sure that critical services are working as they expect? When we're turning on endpoint DLP, what do we need to kind of be aware of as we're putting it on our devices?
Yeah, so overall, when you're looking at a DLP policy or just DLP in general, it really is two things together. It's a process and a technology. And so one of the important things you have to consider as you're looking to roll out a DLP policy is you want to make sure that you have the supporting process infrastructure, or maybe the people that will address your DLP policies. Whenever there's a violation, there's an alert that's triggered, you want to have people that look at these things, because otherwise they're just going into a queue somewhere and no one will ever see that. So that's one thing to consider when you're looking at deploying a DLP policy, even on an endpoint. You want to make sure that there is supporting processes for that. And also, you also want to provide information to the users with regards to what it means when there is a policy violation. And so it isn't just a technology that you're deploying just on the endpoint. You have to be able to support that, because if a user is displayed a toast, like an alert to say, hey, you're about to do something against company policy, I'm going to block this, prevent you from doing something. Just the act of telling a user that something is happening is not good enough. You also want to educate them to get them to understand the why behind why a particular activity was blocked or prevented. And so it isn't just the deployment of the technology. One of the things to keep in mind is for all the Microsoft platforms, it's all built in. So there is no need to actually deploy any additional software. On the Mac device, obviously, it's another device. It's not a platform that is native to Microsoft, and so there is an agent, but it's all included as part of the Defender agent. So if you deploy Defender, you get Insider Risk Management and DLP at no extra cost, right? So you just deploy it and manage it like you would any other device.
Awesome, thanks, Eric. And great questions, everyone.
Jim, can I add a little bit to that one? Because I know Eric did bring up insider risk, and I've got Aaron here with me as well. So just want to kind of re-emphasize the importance of having both DLP and people and processes, as Eric mentioned. And with that, our insider risk management solution, which we've been in market now for about 2 years, has really helped paint that broader picture, right, and correlate those alerts for you. It helps identify the risk behavior. It gives you the ability to detect that and then actually collaborate across security, HR, and legal, as an example. So happy to answer any questions on that, or if Erin has anything she wants to add, given her background in this product. Yeah.
No, I think that's an excellent call out, Caitlin. And I think just to pile on top of that, when we talk to customers about protecting their sensitive information, DLP is definitely a big part in that. I think with insider risk management, something to, reinforce is that insider risk management is really focused on the context of the user. And so looking at indicators about the user that may make them riskier and may help you detect some of that risky activity, such as data leaks or data theft, because of that intelligence that we see about the user. So for example, a user may be on their way out, they just submitted their resignation, they're about to leave. With insider risk management, you can see that signal and correlate it with potential activity that could indicate that they're also taking information with them to bring with them to their next role. So I think that it's just something to call out that, when thinking about protecting that sensitive information, DLP plays a part, and insider risk management also plays a part as you think about that user context.
Awesome. And Eric did not even try to lead into that thing, but I think it's such an important thing that we get that question a lot of, I already have DLP. Why do I need to think about insider risk? And that's exactly why, because one's focusing on the data and one's focusing on the user and what they're doing. Another great question.
One other thing to add to that, just really quickly, Jim, is, because all these Microsoft solutions are all, it's all part of one big umbrella, you can pivot very quickly from one to another. So I'll give you a very interesting use case. So let's say on the DLP side, you receive an alert you see an alert, a user is attempting to exfiltrate data. One of the things that you can do is you can quickly pivot to Defender to see if their endpoint maybe has been compromised, because that might be the reason why there's an exfiltration of data. And then if it has been compromised, you can update the endpoint, you can apply patches and so forth and address the issue there. If that's not the case, another thing you can do is you can also pivot from DLP over to insider risk management, as we were talking about just a moment ago, where you can discover perhaps a user is exhibiting behaviors that is not normal or out of the ordinary for them, which may lead to other investigations. And if that's not the case, then you can go back to DLP and just focus on DLP as, here's an incident, we need to train the user, educate the user, and make them aware that what they did was inappropriate. But because everything's all integrated, we have the ability to quickly pivot the view and minimize the risk wherever it happens to be.
Awesome. Great questions. Everybody loves DLP. Switching gears a little bit, another question up here, didn't give their name, but mentioned, that SecureScore has been a great tool for them for assessing security risks in their organization. They're asking if we have a similar tool for compliance assessments, whether it's PCI or HIPAA, SOX, or other frameworks such as NIST. Shilpa, I'll hand that over to you to talk a little bit about what we do in that area.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And that's a great question. We absolutely have a solution that does similar on the compliance side. It's called Microsoft Compliance Manager. What Compliance Manager does is provides you out-of-box regulatory assessment templates. So you have a template for PCI, you have a template for GDPR, HIPAA, more than 300 templates today. We also break down these templates into controls, so map them to the regulatory controls, provide you guidance on what solutions you can use to implement those controls, and also instructions on how you can implement them. All of these assessments, the actions you take are actually have associated scores. So just like SecureScore. So the minute you actually implement a control, your points go up and you can see how your compliance posture is improving over time. We also have solution view. So if you are someone who's only interested in controls that are related to data protection, you can filter by a solution view instead of the regulatory assessment view. And that will give you a sense of how your compliance posture is with respect to your data protection baseline. There is a default data protection baseline for Microsoft 365, which has controls from GDPR, NIST, and ISO, and that is a really good starting point for anyone who's looking to explore Compliance Manager.
Awesome, Shilpa. And we had a follow-on question on that, asking if Compliance Manager scopes are related to Microsoft 365 only, or if we're supporting other clouds, both within Microsoft and outside Microsoft.
Yeah, this is one of our announcements at Ignite earlier today as well. So we extended our templates to include any product or services that you want to measure your compliance with. So we've launched something called Universal Template. So for each regulatory assessment, as I mentioned before, you have a universal template available within Compliance Manager, and you could map your universal template to any cloud services, whether that's Salesforce, Oracle, SAP. We also did a demo of how you can do that in our breakout session before this. So I would encourage you to go back and watch the on-demand session if you're looking to use that capability. We have also included some of the Azure and Dynamics 365 templates in Compliance Manager as well. So I encourage you to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you, Shilpa. Have another question here related to insider risk. And, we talked about what we're doing around user and data leaks, but are we looking around anything of kind of other platforms yet, such as maybe financial transactions or other systems?
Yeah, so today, as you probably all heard, we're super excited to announce the healthcare policy template. So as we start to look across industries and look at industry-specific insider risk cases, that's an example where we're definitely trying to add some breadth in the capability there. We also have a security policy violation policy template that we offer today, which focuses on possible security violations coming from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So you can start to detect when a user is downloading unwanted software or trying to tamper with security controls, for example.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Great questions here. Appreciate everyone pulling in. Another one I wanted to point out, was one of my things that I saw as a great announcement today, was the new co-authoring capabilities for protected documents. I think it really brings our story of collaboration together, no matter what documents we're working on. Kind of a simple question, what platforms, Eric, does co-authoring work on?
Why don't I take this?
Oh, go ahead, Molly.
Yeah, no worries. So co-authoring today, we already announced web co-authoring. I think it was several months back. And the desktop version of co-authoring, we just announced it went GA just a couple of weeks back. And stay tuned for the mobile platform as well. I'm not going to reveal a timeline, but that is something that we are working on.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Molly. Other question, as we kind of, talk about the templates, another question here, what other templates are we looking that are maybe industry or region specific, such as healthcare in Australia? I know we had a few mentions of some new templates coming out today.
Yeah, we have the way we think about templates within Compliance Manager is we look at region as well as industry. Very recently, we also brought in 3 additional privacy regulation specific templates. So for healthcare, there are I can't remember the number at the top of my head, but over 10 plus assessment templates for healthcare specific. We have 40 plus for financial services specific and over 200 for data protection and privacy. I'll post a link of where you can see all the available templates in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Shilpa.
Jim?
Another question. Oh,
yeah, just sorry,
Caitlin?
Just before you go to the next question, if you can, I'd love Christoph or Jenny to share some of the work they're doing in communication compliance for financial services.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, so back to the person that asked that's either working for a bank or a financial institution on detecting insider risk. We're doing a number of things to either fulfill your regulatory obligations, SEC 17A-4 or FINRA, to detect some of those risky behaviors such as collusion, bribery, dealing with customer complaints, insider trading, and a bunch of others. So again, and think of communication compliance looking at what I would say on, let's say, a team chat that would meet some of those risky patterns, and where you should think as a whole suite that we offer at Microsoft versus point solution is that signal will then feed into insider risk management solution and potentially could be a trigger. So you get a trigger that Christoph wants to collude with Caitlin or do some insider trading, and suddenly then RM will use that as a trigger to see what else is Christoph up to. Is he downloading confidential information, things like that? So I know you've been asking a lot of great one-to-one questions about each solution, but think of it as a suite, and there's really a big effort that we're driving to connect the dots, so, and including with DLP and so forth. So thanks for the tee up, Caitlin.
No, thank you, Christoph, and thank you for Caitlin, because I wanted to get to communication compliance. I think we had some great announcements today on that too. The one most important, I think, being the day zero insights of, helping organizations quickly identify those situations where there may be concerning content. But when I think about that, and Jenny, this question for you, some groups may be concerned this is inadvertently infringing on their employees' privacy. This may be giving too much information too soon. What are some of the safeguards that we've put in place to help address those concerns that organizations may have?
That's a great concern, Jin. And To address that, we do have multiple layers of privacy controls to appease any customer concerns. And so let me just go through a couple by starting with our role-based access control. That means all individuals who have access to communication compliance are given a specific role, and that constrains the types of actions and that they can take when they're using communication compliance. This way, we're limiting the amount of control that one individual has over an organization's communications. So, for example, an investigator can really only view the policy matches that, if you check out our breakout session, you can see a screenshot of day 0 insights. And if you create a policy, you can actually look for threatening messages, offensive content, or for keyword dictionaries. And so investigators are really only able to view and take action on the policy matches, but not create the policies themselves. So that's one form of constraining the actions. But on top of that, we also want to just mention that none of the actual policies are auto-created, and there is no auto-monitoring of your organization's communication. So the full control is in customers' hands in terms of how they utilize all of the features that communication compliance offers. So kind of going back to day 0 insights, that's a snapshot of your organization's communication on day 0. Everything after is in customers' hands to drive forward.
Awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much. I think that's we're talking about a lot of data and correlating it together to give signals, but how are we protecting our users? And we know different countries around the world have very different regulations on that. So it's really important we have those controls. Another question on DLP seems to be the exciting topic of the day here. This person asked the question, what are our DLP solutions for non-Office Suite products? What are we doing to extend to other applications, other file type extensions? The example they give is ArcGIS, but I know, CAD documents is another common scenario that we're looking to flag. Eric, what are we doing in DLP in that area?
Yeah, great question, actually, and very timely question, because we have an announcement this week specifically addressing that. So for when we're looking at files that are either password protected or are zipped, like in archive files, for example, we have a new way to actually define policies for that. You can also inspect that content natively now, so it's one of the new capabilities that we have. But also for those files that are outside of what we would normally inspect. So think of CAD files or maybe medical files or other records for which you typically wouldn't do content inspection. We have a new capability that allows you to create a DLP policy specifically on the file type or the file extension. So for example, with a CAD file, you could say, well, if you see a file that has this particular extension or is of this particular type, you can enforce a policy. So you can't upload that file to the cloud, for example, or you can't store it on a USB drive or share it with someone. So we are extending well beyond just the content types that we're able to inspect natively to also support content types that you may have developed internally. So you may have your own homegrown applications that we would not necessarily be able to inspect. And you can also build a DLP policy for all of those.
Great, thanks. And we've got one other question here as well. This person is saying that they're getting a lot of false positives in DLP or low-level reports that are requiring a lot of follow-up. What are some of the ways or best practices, Eric, that our customers can do to maybe better tune or make sure that we're focusing on the high priority alerts and kind of cutting through some of the noise that inevitably happens when we're setting up things such as DLP?
Sure, and that another great question. So the thing about DLP is we do have 3 ways of enforcing a DLP policy. One of them is in a monitor mode, so you can make sure that the DLP is actually policy is actually doing what you're expecting it to do within the environment, and it's giving you the results. But there's always going to be a little bit of fine tuning with regards to the content, and so one of the ways that you can increase the fidelity of your rule is to add additional elements to the rule. So maybe initially you're looking for just maybe like a social security number. Well, the reality is there are a lot of numbers that end up looking like a social security number. And so one of the things that you can start looking at is maybe using proximity rules. So you can say, well, I need to have a social security number and I need to have a name within a certain amount of characters. So there are ways that we can tune the policies that way to help reduce the false positives. And you can keep adding qualifiers with regards to the DLP policy. Another way that you can, there are going to be some stubborn bits of data that are just going to cause false positives. And another way that you can manage those is actually to group them as part of a larger alert. So one of the new capabilities we introduced a few months ago was the ability to collate a number of events that are of similar nature, and you can handle them as one big single DLP event. So for example, if you're getting 10 false positives, you can group them together and manage them. It also is really applicable for other forms of policy violations that are going to be consistently managed in the same way, so you can group them together.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. So we've got a few minutes left here. Before we close out, I'll open to our panel. If there's anything anybody may want to add on or call out, maybe there was a great announcement from one of our other sessions today that we didn't touch on today. Encourage people to go back to there. So give everybody another minute here. If there's any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well.
Jim, you've got our blogs that you're going to post, I believe, as well? Okay,
do.
awesome. Let's get those up, maybe. Yeah, there's lots of great stuff from Insider Risk. We made lots of enhancements to help with the alert and triage experience. So again, like kind of accelerating that time to action, managing the noise, as well as integration with Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel. So that was another big announcement on our side as well. I'm sure others have things they'd want to share.
Yeah, and there is one question here too that Pontus asked, and using MIP or other tools to identify data crossing borders, country A, country B. I know we're not talking about it here, but Shilpa, maybe I'll give you 30 seconds to touch on privacy management and invite people to come talk about that session tomorrow, because I think that's where we get to talk about some of those cross-border data transfer scenarios.
Yes, thank you, Jim. So yeah, we recently launched our first privacy solution, privacy management for Microsoft 365. We have a detailed session on it tomorrow morning. We have a breakout session and also an Ask the Expert session following up to that, where we will cover in depth how do you create policies and prevent data transfers between departments, between regions. So really encourage you to attend that session, and that will be covered in depth as it's one of the scenarios that we will be walking through.
Awesome, fantastic. So I want to thank everybody in the audience for a great set of questions. I think this was a really active and engaging group today. And thank you to our panel for taking the time today to help answer them. I hope we were able to provide some very valuable insight on the Microsoft compliance solutions. So if you want to find out more information or start digging in further on any of the topics that we talked about, please, as Caitlin mentioned, come and visit our blogs. We've got 6 here that are on the page. Use our chat, and the session details following the event will have more links that are out there. As always, I want to thank you for your time today, and we encourage your feedback. So please remember to fill out your session evaluations at aka.ms/ignite evals. It's through this feedback that we get to make decisions on what topics and sessions we're going to bring to y'all in future events. So on behalf of our panel, I want to thank everyone for their time today, and I hope you have a great rest of Ignite. So bye now.